Hey everyone, I hope you are okay and doing your projects and assignments correctly. I need to follow up some of the assignment problems or issues. Let me share the screen and then I will go through the this week's syllabus, this week's assignment. Okay. So the first thing for the project is I found many of you haven't used the template code that has already been provided for the turtle pattern one. So you see here, there should be a main function. Here it is mentioned replace pass with your code. That means you need to write your code here, maybe the input function, right? But do not write anything inside the input function. Do not write any string inside the input function. So input function is like that. You don't need to write anything here like weight or height, whatever it is. You don't need to write anything. Just input function. And that can be grabbed with some variable. Make sure the variable naming is the right convention. Or it's the camel case. So if you're writing weight of something, this is the right variable name, right? But W is not a right variable name, naming style. And you need to replace the pass. So I found many of you have written some code, but still there is a pass here. Okay. Now I have mentioned here that add functions here that your main program calls. That means you need to write your function here. For example, you need to write a turtle project or a turtle function. So for example, the turtle function is turtle go. And you're writing something. I'm not writing anything, just writing pass. You may write something here. Then from your main function, I have mentioned here that you need to call that program from your main function. So maybe you're getting something here, some variable. And if it is not positive, there's some error. Then you can just check some values. If it's less than -1, less than 1, or height is less than 1, it's a negative value. So you're returning from here. Then replace your code with the pass again. So you need to write here, okay, calling that function. So you're calling that function, right? So if you're not using this pattern, the autograder will not grade you. So what happened with the autograder? The autograder automatically call the main function. So you have to have the main function. I found many of you have written your code on your computer and replace it here. No, it will not work. As because I will not grade your work manually. The autograder will grade these things manually. So to pass all of the test cases, you need to follow this template. Every time whenever I have provided in template, you need to use the same template. You need to write whatever it is written. Okay, you need to write code here. You can import turtle, you can import random, whatever the library function you're using, you need to write here. Then it calls the main function. Inside the try, basically these are like input things. And if you are writing anything inside the input function, then it will print actually, and you will lose some grades. So I always told you, do not write anything inside the input function. Then this is the validation. If it is not valid, it is getting the value again and again. And then the next level of validation is like your user-defined validation. Now I have written here a pass. You need to write your code here. So this is the way how the autograder works. But if you are not following this, I found many of you haven't maintained the indentation. So you need to maintain the indentation. And I found many of you haven't used the same template, haven't used any doc string. So if you're not using those things, the autograder will automatically deduct those points. So be careful from next onward projects. If you're not maintaining those things, then the autograder will raise some error and will not grade anything. Okay. Now I need to go through this week's reading assignments. So the very first one is the parameter. So what is the parameter? I think you have already known the function basics, how to write a function. So this is you can write. So this is how you can write a function, like using a def command or def keyword, then the function name. Previously, I haven't mentioned to pass any parameters, so you just written just the parentheses. But now we're going to use some parameters. What are the parameters? So the parameters are the required values passed to a function. So this is our function. I'm going to call this function. The function name is addition. I'm going to call this function addition. And I'm passing two parameters, two values, 5 and 7. Then how I can get those 5 and 7 to the function? I need to use some parameter to grab those things. So I'm writing a num1 and num2. Using the num1, I'm getting 5. Using the num2, I'm getting 7. Now I am using those two parameters to calculate something, like printing the summation of num1 and num2. Now, the ordering is really important in case of passing some value and grabbing those values through the parameters. Is because if you're writing here num2 and num1, then num2 will be 5, num1 will be 7. So you need to make sure that the ordering is important. So if you're writing here A and B, A value is 5, maybe B value, A value is an integer value, B value is a float value. Make sure the first value is integer and second value is float. Otherwise, you will have some errors. Okay. And there is a term called the named parameter. So if you don't remember the ordering of the parameter, then you can use a named value. So what is the named value? You can see here, I have mentioned two parameters, num1 and num2. When I'm calling the function, I'm writing num2 first, num1 second. But here I have mentioned, okay, num2 is 2, num1 is 5. It doesn't matter. So in case of a named parameter, ordering is not important. It's because you are identifying the exact parameter with the value. So if you're passing 5 and 2, the num1 is 5, num2 is 2. In case of 2 and 5, again, num1 is 2, num2 is 5. But here, if you're writing num2 is 2, num1 is 5, then it will be the reverse. Like it goes here, it goes there. If you're using named parameter. So in case of a named parameter, you don't need to remember the ordering. But if you're not using named parameter like that, you have to maintain the ordering. So 5, 2 is num1 and num2. 2, 5, then num1 is 2 there. Then another important thing is like checking the data type of the parameter. You're passing here an integer and a string. Here, you're just grabbing those two values with num1 and num2, and you're doing some operation like addition operation, num1 and num2. You cannot add an integer with a string, so it is invalid. So you need to check the data type of those parameters whenever you are doing some operation. So for example, you're just using the very common things, try and except. So this is 5 and this is string, integer and string. This will not work. So this will give you an error. Or you can use, okay, if it is not a string, then you are not doing anything. You're not writing so you're not adding those two numbers. And there are a lot of ways you can just calculate, you can check the parameters data type. This is one of them. Then another thing is like the optional parameters. So I have already told you a default parameter that was required. No, I'm sorry, not the default. What is the required parameter? just like num1 and num2 that we have written on the previous slides. Then the named parameter, when you are calling a function, you can use the named parameter. You can change the ordering there. The ordering is not required in case of a named parameter. And the third type of parameters is like optional parameter. So we call it like default parameter as well. So here we have mentioned num1, num2, and bool is true. That means those two values are required. And the third value I have put here as a default value. This is not required. So whenever you're calling 5 and 7, it goes here 5 to num1, 7 to num2. And since we are not passing anything, the bool value is default true. So it is not required. You will not get any error. In the second line, we're passing 5, 7, and false. If you are passing any value, then it will replace. If you're not passing any value here, then it will be the default one. So always the default parameter on the right-hand side. You cannot write the bool true at the first place. The default parameter should be on the right-hand side after finishing the required parameter. You cannot write num1, bool true, and then num2. That will be an error. So num1 is a required parameter, num2 is a required parameter. After doing all of these required parameter, then the default is the very end after doing those required one. Okay, sometimes you don't know that how many parameters you need to pass or how many values you need to pass. So for example, there are like 8 values. Sometimes you're just passing 7 values. For example, this is like a sum function, and you are going to sum that many numbers. If you're sending 2 numbers, that will sum up 2 numbers. If you're sending 5 numbers, they will sum up 5 numbers. Then how you can define that, okay, here's the 5 value we're going to pass. They are like 5 parameters. That means you need to write the sum function for maybe 100 times. And for each sum function, you're just writing, okay, there are 2 numbers. Then the second sum function is the 3 parameters. The third one is the 4 parameters, and so on and so forth. This is not a right way to write your code, right? So if you don't know that your values are not strict, it is variable, then you can use something like asterisk. So we're adding asterisk nums. That means we're not sure that how many parameters the function calls. So here we're calling only 10 values. So this asterisk num is actually a list. The nums is a list. So nums list gets that many numbers. If you're passing 5 numbers here, that's also valid. If you're sending 100 numbers here, that is also valid. That's because you're writing asterisk so that it's a variable, like the parameters are variable here. Okay. The second one is the returning value. So previously you have written some function, that function only prints something, but every time the function should have a return keyword. For example, our very basic built-in function like the len function, if you're writing len and inside the parentheses, you're just passing a list, it will return you some number. So the len function should have a return keyword that returns some value. So whenever you are writing a function should have these required things like def, function name, parameters, and a return keyword that will return something. So previously we have printed here, but this is not a good way. So from next onward, whenever you are writing any function, do not write any print option, just return. In case you need to print here something, just return from here, print here whenever you're calling. Okay. I'm not going to details about those things. You need to read the return statement and the side effect things. But the third one is the list methods. So there are a lot of methods in our list data structure. I think you have already gone through a list a little bit, as because this is a really important data structure in Python. It has a lot of built-in method. We are going to discuss a little some of those methods, not all of those. So one of the important methods are like the append. Whenever you need to add some item to the list, then you need to use the append function. There is another function called insert. I will go in a minute. What's the difference between append and insert? Whenever you are writing an append function, it will add some value at the end of the list. And how you can write the append function? What is the structure? You need to write your list name. So for example, here is your list name, then a period sign or dot, then the function name append. This is the list method. Then there is a parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis, you need to put the parameter. So if you're going to add some string value, you can write some string. If you would like to add some integer value, you can pass only the integer value here. But this is the structure: the list name, dot, then the list method, parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, you need to write the parameter. For example, here is a list 1, 2, 3. I would like to add a value 4 at the end of this list. So what I need to do, this is my list, then dot, then the append function, then the parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, I can pass this variable. I can pass the exact value or using some variable. So whenever going to print the my list, it will print 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then the reverse method is the pop. The reverse method, in a sense, whenever you are going to remove some item. So same way, you need to write the list name, then dot or period, then the list method, then pop. Then inside the parenthesis, normally you don't need to write any parenthesis here, like any value here. So that means there is a default value here, right? What is the default value? Default value is like the -1 or the last index of our list. So here you can see our list is like 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to print the list. Then I'm writing okay, my list dot pop, then nothing passing here. That means if we're not passing anything here, the default parameter is like -1. So -1 is the last index. That means it will pop the last item. Well, if you're going to pass any value, so as I have already told you, that the default parameter is -1, and it is an optional parameter. If you're passing anything, you're actually passing the index of the list to remove that index value. So if you're passing, for example, 2, that means it goes from here 0, 1, 2. It will remove 3. Okay. And if you're not passing anything, it will remove the last one. The insert method is similar to the append one, but append is always appending at the very last. But in case of insert, you can insert any value in between any values. Like for example, if you like to add something in between 1 to 2. So what you need to do, you need to use the insert method. Then you need to insert some value in between 1 and 2. That means you need to push 2 on the right side. Actually, you need to push, you need to insert some value on the index 1. So here, what we're doing here, we're writing 2 and high. So same way, those are like the parameters, and definitely the order is important here. If you're not maintaining the order, then it will mess up. Just like our default parameter things in the function. So the first one is the index to insert, and second parameter is the object to insert. So what we're going to do, we need to insert high on the second index. So this is the 0th index, this is the 1th index, this is the 2th index. So we're going to write high here or insert high here and push 3 to the right. So you can see here 1, 2, then high, and push 3 to the right side. Similarly, like similar to the pop method, we have that remove method. So in case of remove method, we're just inserting the index, so it will remove that index value. So if it is like 2, 0, 1, 2, we're going to remove, oh, I'm sorry, the remove actually using the value, not the index. So if you're adding 2 here, it will remove that value. So if you're adding 2, so 0, sorry, 1, see, it's going to find 2. So this is not 2. So this is 2, it will remove 2. So the difference between the pop and the remove is, in case of a pop method, you are going to pass the index. If you're not passing anything, then the default parameter is -1. But if you're passing anything, that could be the index of the list. And in case of a remove method, you're going to pass the value to remove. And another important difference between the remove and the pop method is, the pop method remove or pop something based on the index you're passing and return that value. In case of remove, it is just removing, not returning something. So I think there's a, here's the example, here's the difference. So the pop method remove the value and returns it, but in the remove method, it is not returning anything. And it is based on the index, it is based on the value. Then some methods are like count. If you'd like to count something in a list, for example, how many 2s are there, you can write, okay, my list dot count, and then passing the value that you're going to count. If they are like multiple count, it will count you that many numbers. So here 2 is 1, so 2.0 is not 2. So you'll get 1 here. I think so. Check. What? Oh, I see. So it will find 1, 2, 3, and 4 times. So 2 and 2.0 is actually 2, though this is a float and integer, but generally they are treating as a float. So it is matching my var. It is just replacing here, so it is also matching. Then 8 divided by 4, it's the integer division. It will return you 2. So here 2, here 2, 2.0 is 2 and 2. That means it will count 4. Then another method is the index method. Index method will give you the index of some certain element. So we're adding my list dot index 2. It is searching that value and return you that index. So the index is 1 here, right? So you are sending the value, it will return in the index. And you need to write your own code and check if there are like multiple 2s, what it will return. Sort method is like sorting the numbers or values. So for example, there is a list of numbers. If you're writing my list dot sort, it is not returning a new list, rather it is changing the original list, but the values are sorted. So this is very important. If you're writing my list dot sort, it will sort the list in place. That means it is not returning a new list, rather it is changing the original list. So for example, if you're using a list and sometimes you need to sort the list, and then you will not get the ordering of those lists if you use the my list dot sort, is because the sort method will sort your original list in place. You will not get the ordering of this original method, what you have written, the original list. So be careful about using the sort. So there is another function called sorted. The sorted function. So as I will go in a minute when I'm just covering the other slide. That sorted method or function is a built-in function, will return a new list. It is not changing the original one. But if you're adding dot sort, it will definitely sort the original list in place. So basically, you don't need to pass any parameter here. If you're not passing anything, it will sort ascending way. If you're writing here reverse is true, then it is returning descending order value. Then there is a reverse method. Reverse method is not the reverse sort. So reverse method will reverse the values. So if it's true, true is here, XYZ is here, dog is here, just reversing the list. But reverse sort is, it is sorting first, then reversing. Okay. Then list of numbers. So as I've told you, so there's the difference between the function and methods. Whenever you're writing a method, you need to write, okay, my list dot the method name, then the parentheses. If you're writing a function, like a built-in function, you need to write the function name, and inside the function name, you need to pass the parameter. And parameter is our list. So sum function is the popular one. Sum function will sum all of those numbers. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it will sum up 3, 3, 6, 10, 15. It will return the 15. So what happens if you're writing here, okay, this is a list, sum this list? It will not work. It's because the sum function will only sum up the integer numbers. So since those are like a string, it will raise an error. In the mean function, if you're writing a mean function, you're calling a mean function, and inside the parentheses, you just pass the list, it will give you the minimum value of the list. So what's the minimum value of the list? Is the 1. So it will return the 1. Now, what happens if there are a lot of strings here in our list? Will that raise an error? No, it will not raise an error in case of mean function. It's because mean function will find the minimum things. So I think the minimum one is the Aaron. So it will return you Aaron. But in case of a sum function, there is an error. You need to remember those things. The same way, max function will return the maximum value of the list. If you're using a string, it will return the maximum thing. So zebra, so it will return the zebra. Z is the largest one, maximum one. Now the list iteration. So previously you have written a for loop to iterate, not the iteration, you have written the same thing again and again for a for loop. You can iterate a loop, iterate the list using a for loop. So if you remember, this is our list, we can write 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, how we can iterate each of the elements from the list? You can use a for loop. So this is the for loop. Then we're going to iterate the for loop, iterate the list. So here's the list numbers. Then the in things. In is the operator. I already told you about the in operator. Then this is the loop variable. So if you write for loop variable in list and print the loop variable, it will print each of the item again and again. So it will print 1, then it goes here, print 2, print 3, and print 4. This is how you're going to write a for loop to iterate a list. And you can go through here what happens behind the scene. You can also a while loop to iterate list, but it could be tricky, but you need to be very careful when you are converting a for loop to while loop. So normally for loops are exclusively used in iterating over a list, but if you'd like to use a while loop, then you need to maintain those things. Okay, there's some condition and how long it will iterate till the end of the last value. So we're going to write the length. So I is less than length. That means I start from 0 index, the 0th index, then 1, 2, 3, and length is 4. So whenever it goes here, 4, then so first time I is 0. That means 0 is less than 4, printing. Then increment it 1, 1 is less than 4, okay. Then 2, 2 is less than 4, okay, print. Then 3, 3 is less than 4, okay, print. Then 4. Then 4 is less than 4, no, it's not true. So it just exits from that loop. And here's the difference between some comparison between the for loop and while loop while you are iterating the list. Okay, so that's all for this week's reading assignment. I'm not going to discuss the project because I'm going to discuss a little bit of the project. So in the project, you may find something like, okay, write a function in rabbits.py and name the function like exactly these things, do research. And previously you have written, like you have printed everything using a print statement, but this time you need to print everything to a CSV file. So you know what is the CSV file? It's a comma separated file. So everything is separated by comma. So if you go to the rabbit here, the rabbit design, not the design, this one, rabbit, you can see here, there are a lot of files. So this is the rabbit.py, you need to write your code. Then this is the rabbits.csv. You need to print everything inside this CSV. And then this is the run rabbits.py. You don't need to change anything here. That's because we are calling do research function from here. So do not change anything here. Write your function here in the rabbits.py. And whenever you need to print something, then you need to store those things in the CSV file. And you need to make sure that whenever there is a comment, start with the hash things. Those are really strict things. That's because the autograder will grade you according to those things whenever. So if you're not writing hash things here, then you'll get some error. So make sure you maintain all of those things. And here's the file list. Do not change anything. You need to write your code in the rabbits.py. Then whenever you have some output, you need to write those values to the rabbits.csv. So right now there are some values. Don't worry about those things. Whenever you are writing something, it will replace. But this is the format, how you can write your files. So starting with this hash table of rabbit pairs, then this value, this is the exact value you need to write, and then the numbers. So numbers are dynamic, but those values are static. So this value and these values are static, but the other values are dynamic. And dynamic, in a sense, like you need to use some variable so that the variable will write here. Okay, that's all for this week's presentation or whatever, the assignment details. And please do not email me on the weekends. So if you're just emailing, I found a lot of you have still emailing me and in Saturday and Sunday that you're going to submit your project, but normally I don't reply during the weekends. So that means you're missing those assignments. So make sure you email me at least Wednesday, Thursday, so that I have some time to check your emails and reply you in Friday. If you have any follow-up things, you can just email me before the 11:59 p.m. Friday. And if you're not emailing me before that time, then definitely I will reply you on the Monday. So make sure you work on your project with some time. Okay, that's all, and see you next week. Bye-bye.